When you suggest something, you are basically just saying, this is one possible option. But when you recommend something, you are basically saying, I have experience with this, and this is what I think you should do. I'm Teacher Mike. I help adults like you learn real English that they can use in their daily lives. Today we are talking about the words recommend, suggest, and advise. In this video, we're not going to talk about every single way that we use these words, but we are going to talk about the main differences between them, some of the ways that we use them, and some common mistakes that people make when using them. Although native English speakers sometimes use these words to mean the same thing, they are a tiny bit different. When you suggest something, you are basically just saying, this is one possible option. You aren't really telling them that they should do it, you are just giving them an idea. But when you recommend something, you are basically saying, I have experience with this, and this is what I think you should do. The word recommend is also a bit more formal than suggest is. Advise is basically the same as recommend, but it's a bit stronger and it is the most formal of these three words. We usually use advise when someone has special knowledge or a special position, and it is their job to help other people make decisions. For example, a doctor might advise a patient to eat healthier food. Or a lawyer might advise a client not to say anything. Suggest and advise are usually followed by a gerund, that subject verb, or a noun. So you can say, she suggested staying at this hotel. She suggested that I stay at this hotel. Or, she suggested this hotel to me. Likewise, you can say, I recommend ordering the salmon. I recommend that you order the salmon. Or, I recommend the salmon. Some people also add the word should. For example, I recommend that you should order the salmon. And I used to think that this was wrong. However, I have learned that there are native speakers who do this, and it is not wrong. Even though it's not wrong, I still don't recommend doing this just because it's not very common and it's unnecessary. But one thing that is wrong is using recommend subject to verb or suggest subject to verb. For example, I recommend you to order the salmon, or she suggested me to study English. We do not use recommend or suggest this way. Just like recommend and suggest, you can use advise, gerund, advise, that subject verb, or advise, noun. However, with advise, you can use subject to verb. For example, I advise you to exercise 45 minutes per day. We can't do that with recommend or suggest, but we can do that with advise. Also, to advise a person means to give that person information to help them make a decision. For example, my professor advised me. That means that she gave me information to help me make a decision. That is not what it means when we suggest a person or recommend a person. My professor recommended me and my professor suggested me do not mean that my professor gave me information. Those mean that my professor told another person that I am a good choice. For example, maybe I was applying for a job and my professor wrote a letter that said, Mike is an honest and hard-working person. I recommend hiring him. So, whereas advising someone means that you give that person information, recommending someone or suggesting someone mean that you give information about that person to another person. Now, here is a very quick summary of everything that I just said. In daily conversation, many people do not see a big difference between recommend and suggest, but there is a small difference. Advise is the strongest and most formal of these three words, and we usually use it when someone has special knowledge or a special position. Some people add the word should when using suggest and recommend, but I do not recommend doing that. You can't say I recommend you to verb or I suggest you to verb, but you can say I advise you to verb. To advise someone means to give that person information, but to recommend someone or suggest someone means that you give information about that person to another person. And if you want more grammar videos like this one, I recommend checking out my grammar playlist, which has about 100 videos all focusing on grammar. That's all for today. I hope you learned something. Thank you for watching.